private parts. So anything that comes out of your private parts will break the wuzu. So we have three things here: urine or stool, and then we have what I mentioned the other day was mazi as well. Mazi, that thin fluid which is known as precoital fluid, which comes out at the time of being aroused or at the time of having some sexual thoughts, and sometimes you don't even realize it's come out. But if that comes out, that breaks the wuzu. It doesn't necessitate ghusl, but it does break the wuzu. And then I've also mentioned the ruling of cleaning the boxes in that situation. You should clean it because it's impure. But if it was less than a dirham, which is 3 to 5 dirhams, then it will be forgiven. Meaning if you forgot to wash it, or you didn't even, if you didn't realize, then your wuzu will not be valid in the first place. But for example, you forgot to wash it, or it's not easily possible to wash it, you just wiped it at the time with tissue and it was a very small amount, then your namaz will still be valid if it was less than 3 to 5 centimeters in diameter. And another thing you learn from this is urine, stool, mazi, these are things that generally come out. If it was something that doesn't usually come out, it's not meant to come out of the private part, but it does come out, then that will also break the wuzu as well. So for example, some people, they have some sort of insects that come out from their private part due to some illness. Sometimes it's a rarity, so that the coming out of the insect from that part, from the private part, will also break the wuzu as well. That is number one. Number two, flowing of blood or pus. Now, when a person has a cut, just having the cut and seeing the blood does not break the wuzu. The blood must flow, meaning it must move out of its place. If you have a cut and the blood is just still, it's not moved, and you dab it with tissue, that's fine. Your wuzu will not be broken. In fact, the scholars have said that blood that you wipe with the tissue, that blood itself is not impure, because it didn't break the wuzu. That's not an impurity. That small blood that didn't break the wuzu, that blood is not impure as well. But if the blood flowed and it moved, then your wuzu will break. It moved from its place. Now, two masalas from this. Number one is, so many people, what they do when they're bleeding, they just put a plaster on that area. Who's going to keep hold of a tissue for 10 minutes, 20 minutes? I'm busy, I put a tissue there. And some people, out of ignorance, they think, okay, that means that the blood is not flowing from its place, because technically it's not. When you've got a small plaster, put it there, the blood is in one place, it's not moving from its place now. So they'll think the wuzu isn't broken. However, the masala here is that we have to imagine that if the plaster was not there, and that much blood came out, that had the plaster not been there, it would have flowed, it would have moved from its place, then wuzu will be broken. And in the flip side, some people apply a plaster when the bleeding has stopped, there's just a cut there, and then they put the plaster on. But sometimes what happens is that there's just that little blood on the face of the wound. Like we said, the normal blood that doesn't break wuzu, there's just that blood, because the skin's gone, there's the blood there that's not flowing, they put the plaster on there. Now when they remove the plaster, or the plaster see-through, they can see a spot of blood, and they may think that that's broken the wuzu. But the correct masala here is that, again, if it was a small amount of blood that is not actually moved from its place, it's just the blood from the face of the wound, then the wuzu isn't broken. That's number one. And number two is, we learn from this, I'm going to ask you guys now, that we learn from this the ruling of a blood test. That does a blood test break wuzu or not? So put your hands up if you think blood test breaks wuzu. Okay, so we got a 50-50. I didn't check here. Blood test breaks wuzu? You're in the 50. Okay, so we got complete 50-50 then. Complete 50-50. The answer is yes. A blood test will break wuzu. Even though injection goes in, they take the blood out, They removed the injection, no blood has moved from its place, and they put a plaster there, whatever, there's no blood moving from its place. The wuzu is still broken. Why? Because they did that jab and the blood has been taken into that machine or whatever it is, the injection that takes the blood out. That is so much blood that had that machine or the injection not been there, the blood would have flowed. So if it was just the stab of the injection and they removed the injection, that blood would have flowed by itself. But just because it's gone into the machine doesn't mean the wuzu isn't broken. The wuzu in that scenario is also broken as well. And we said blood or pus. So pus, when you're growing up as a teenager, most of the time you'll get acne, you'll get pus spots, okay? So when you pop these spots, if it like pop and it flows, then that is wuzu broken. Now sometimes what happens is you have these pus spots and it's not like you're intentionally popping them, you just put your finger on that area and that area will feel wet. And you'll even see that the size of the spot, it goes smaller. The size of the spot goes smaller, but when you remove your finger, there's no pus flowing out. So in that scenario, will wuzu be broken? Yes or no? The answer is in that scenario, wuzu will not be broken because the pus is not flowing. You've just put your finger on it and there's a wetness there. The wuzu will only be broken by that pus, that if you were to leave it alone, if it were to flow and move out from its place, then the wuzu will be broken. So if it wouldn't flow by itself, then wuzu is not broken. That's one masala. And another masala is sometimes you might read that water coming out of your eyes will break the wuzu. Water coming out of your eyes will break the wuzu. So the rectification of this is that this is when the water that comes out from your eyes is pus. Okay, so when you have an eye infection or you have some sort of wound which results, or injury or something which results pus coming out of the eyes, then wuzu will be broken. But if, for example, tears, so you're crying out of happiness, out of fear, out of grief, you didn't know your sabak, you're crying, your study is gonna beat you up, then your wuzu is not broken. Or if something enters your eyes, some dirt enters your eyes, and that causes you some discomfort. And another example of this is contact lenses. I remember the first time I got contact lenses, I couldn't get them in, so you're just poking your eye, and I was just tearing all, just water coming all out. So even that water does not break the wuzu because it's not pus, it's just water. You have itchy eyes and water comes out, that does not break the wuzu. You know, sometimes onions, it causes like tears to come out, that will not break the wuzu. The only time when water exiting from your eyes will break the wuzu is when that water is pus. And the scholars have said one way, obviously you might get an idea yourself, but one way to see if it's pus or not, or if it's just normal water, is you get a clear, for now we have tissue or rumal, something like that, and you wipe it, and then you'll see the color of that water. If it's a different color, it's not clear, and if it smells, then it's pus. If it's just clear, no smell, it's water. Well, when you have eye infection, it's like seeping out, isn't it? So you'll see when you get an eye infection, it comes out. So in that scenario, your wuzu will be broken. So we said flowing of blood or pus. Number 3, going mad or insane. So if somebody, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us, but if somebody has a problem of where they have like fits, or they have these moments of becoming insane, in and out of insanity, when they become insane, then their wuzu is broken. Okay, now from this, let's see if it's mentioned here. No. Okay, so included in this would be, becoming insane. You can break it down to loss of consciousness and fainting as well. So if a person fainted, Sheikh Mahir, he fainted in Jummah Salah. So when you faint, your wuzu breaks. And losing consciousness, as well. And what else will be included in this is becoming intoxicated. Becoming intoxicated will also break your wuzu. So this includes alcohol and this includes drugs as well. Alcohol and drugs. However, now a question is asked, we have to mention it, that some people, they only take a small amount of drugs, just one puff of drugs. Will it invalidate the wuzu or not? So the answer is that one puff will not invalidate the wuzu. Such a small amount that does not intoxicate a person will not invalidate the wuzu. If it's such a large amount that person becomes intoxicated, then it breaks the wuzu, because becoming insane, losing consciousness and becoming intoxicated, all of these things, you don't know what's happening or what's happening or what you are doing, whether you farted or not in that scenario. That's why in that situation your wuzu will be broken. No, vape will not break the wuzu, because as far as I'm aware, vape is not something which intoxicates you. So it has nicotine in it, but nicotine doesn't intoxicate you. So the same thing would apply for cigarettes. It gives you that buzz, you feel high or whatever maybe, but it's not intoxication. So that's why I just mentioned that even taking one puff of drugs, you might get a bit of a buzz from it, or a headache or whatever, but as long as you're not completely out of it or intoxicated, then your wuzu isn't broken. So going mad or insane, fainting, vomiting a mouthful, laughing in namaz. Laughing in namaz. So the scholars have said there are three types here. There is one thing called qahqaha, one thing called dhihk, and one thing called tabassum. Three types of laughing. So one is qahqaha. Qahqaha is when you laugh out so loud that the sound of the laughter can be heard by those next to you and around you. So you laugh so loud that the person next to you can hear as well. Literally, LOL, laugh out loud. Okay? The ruling of that is that it will break your wuzu and it will break your namaz. Then you have number two. Does anybody remember the Arabic word I used? Dhihk. Dhihk. Now dhihk is when you laugh out loud in a manner where the sound of the laughter can only be heard by yourself. So you can only hear it yourself. The people around you, next to you, they can't hear that noise. So the ruling of that is that it will invalidate the namaz, but it won't break your wuzu. So if only you can hear it, then it won't break your wuzu, but it'll break your namaz. And the last thing we had is tabassum. Tabassum is smiling. So when a person, teeth are visible, okay? Now that will not break the namaz and it will not break the wuzu as well. So that is laughing in namaz. And passing wind. So when you pass wind, that breaks the namaz as well. Now falling asleep by resting against something or lying down. There's a bit of detail here. Yes. Well, it depends. As long as there's a voice that comes out from your mouth, the voice sort of moves from your throat. So even sometimes the voice comes out from your nose. But that again, you see that voice is actually coming from your throat. That will invalidate it. Okay. So yes. So going back to falling asleep by resting against something or lying down. Now there's a bit of detail here. Falling asleep, lying down in bed, that will break the wuzu. Everybody agrees. Falling asleep on one of your sides, that will break the wuzu. Everybody agrees. Falling asleep in namaz. Okay, you're reading in Saudi Arabia and Tarawih there. You fall asleep, your wuzu is not broken. You fall asleep in ruku. Okay, in ruku, your wuzu not broken. You fall asleep in the sunnat position of sajda for men. Okay, for women, the ruling is different. When they fall asleep in sajda, the manner where they are, body parts are together, that will break the wuzu because the muscles are relaxed. But when men do it, your forearms should be up. So this part of your hand, it should be up. And your stomach and your knees and your hands should not be together. They should be spaced out. So the sunnah method, when you're in the sunnah method of sajda, that will not invalidate the wuzu as well. Now, what's the ruling for sleeping whilst sitting? So this is where there are details, and listen very carefully as well, that different books will say different things. So, there are certain, you should take the precautious option or precautious view in some of these masalas, which is to do the wuzu again. Especially nowadays, just go to the wuzu khana or in our home, you can do a wuzu again. But I'll mention those details. So you're falling asleep while sitting and you don't lean on anything. So you just sit and you're like this, you're not leaning on anything, and you've fallen asleep without leaning on anything. And your buttocks are firmly on the ground. So you've fallen asleep, not leaning on anything. The scholars say your wuzu in this case does not break. As long as that person, he doesn't fall down onto his sides, or if he does, so he's sleeping and he falls down, but as soon as he falls down, he wakes up, his wuzu will not be broken. Is that clear? Number 2, we have the sajda, okay, the sunnah sajda which I've mentioned. Wuzu does not break in the sunnah sajda position. Number 3, now your buttocks are firmly grounded, and what you do is you raise your knees. Okay, you raise your knees, but your buttocks are still on the ground. So you can even do this where you circled your knees with your hands. Okay, your wuzu will not break in this scenario because your buttocks are still on the ground, even if you're resting your head. Okay, so that's one situation that your wuzu isn't broken. 1 minute. And similarly, if you sit cross-legged, okay, you sit cross-legged, you're not leaning on anything for now, your wuzu is not broken. Or you sat cross-legged and you lean with your hands onto your thighs and then you put your head, your wuzu is not broken. Okay, so that was habwa. There's something mutawarrikan, where basically you put your feet to the one side. Both of your feet are one side, but again your buttocks are firmly grounded. Your wuzu will not be broken. So that was the 3rd scenario. And 4th scenario is when you are leaning on something. So when you are leaning on something, the general thing you will find in the books of Hanafi is that if that thing is removed, then your wuzu will be broken. That is the precautious view. However, the more correct view is that your wuzu is actually not broken. So you're leaning against the wall, you're sat like this, your buttocks are grounded. The correct view is that your wuzu is not broken, but the precautious view is that you should do wuzu again. Especially, there are very big names on both sides. Some who say that yes, when that thing is moved and the person will fall, then the wuzu is broken. So really, we should do wuzu again in this scenario, especially when there's a very big debate on this, and you'll see most of our books, like Talibul Haqq, etc., they say wuzu is broken. So that's why you should do wuzu again. But I'm telling you this for a reason, is especially some of you go to college, university, you go on trams, namaz times are very tight sometimes. So if you were to do wuzu again, or there's no place to make wuzu, it gets very difficult, you fell asleep. So in that situation, you can act upon this second opinion, that the wuzu doesn't break when you're leaning upon something that if it was removed, then you would fall down. So for example, another example of when you might be able to act upon it is when you're traveling on a plane. So you're on the lying down on the seat, okay, and you fell asleep, or buttocks are grounded. Now obviously if the seat which you're leaning on, if it was removed, you'd probably fall down, especially when you're in a deep sleep. That's why they've defined this, or they've made the key factor that if the thing is removed then you'll fall down. Or sorry, some have made it how deep the sleep is. So they say if you're in deep sleep, your wuzu is broken, and some have said that if it's a light sleep, your wuzu is not broken. So obviously if that thing was removed, you're in a deep sleep, you'll fall down. But if it's a light sleep, you'll probably come back straight back up, you won't fall down. But when you're on a plane, people ask this a lot. So in that scenario, if there's nowhere to do wuzu, then you can act upon this. And some people also ask, so for example, we mentioned that sitting on cross-legged and you lean on something. So you have this table, so you lean on this table. Okay, your wuzu will be broken if you're leaning so much that your buttocks now are no longer firmly grounded. So sometimes on the plane you have the food, food tray, and you obviously, you lean on that. So if it's just a slight lean, so this lean, my buttocks are still grounded, but a bit more ahead, and you'll see there's a gap between your buttocks and the ground. So in that scenario, your wuzu will be broken, regardless of whether that thing is removed or not. It'll be broken. So hopefully that clarifies that. Let me just have a look in Fatawa Mahmudiyya. There's something written. So let me just mention those scenarios, and then we're nearly finished, inshallah. By 9 o'clock we should be finished. I wasn't expecting it to take this long, but alhamdulillah, these are important masail, and like I say, that we should try and remember these, very important. So दो जानों बैठा हुआ है और कुहनियों का सहारा दो जानों पर देकर सो रहा है, वुजू का क्या हुक्म है? So ये सूरत नाक़िज़े वुजू नहीं है. So the first situation is you're sat on your knees. Okay, so you sat on your knees and you are leaning with your hands. Will your wuzu be broken? No, because we even said when you're doing this and you're cross-legged as well, as long as your buttocks are grounded, your wuzu isn't broken. Number 2, the second scenario mentioned is दो जानों बैठकर दोनों पैर एक तरफ निकाल दिए हैं, एक हाथ जमीन पर रखकर सहारा लेकर सो गया है, तो क्या हुक्म? ये सूरत भी नाक़िज़ वुज़ू नहीं. So it means by this is you sit in a manner where your buttocks are both on the ground, but your feet are both to one side, so like this, and one hand is actually here as well. So you're resting, but your buttocks are grounded. So that's the main thing. Now sometimes when we do this, there's that gap. So that gap will make it broken. You have to make sure you sit in a manner where the buttocks are grounded. Number 3, चार जानों बैठकर दोनों कुहनियों को जानों पर रखकर उनके सहारे से सो रहा है. So the same as situation 1, but you're cross-legged, you're leaning. What did we say? We mentioned this before. Wuzu not broken. And the fourth scenario is दोनों चार जानों बैठकर दोनों हाथों को जमीन पर रखकर उनसे सहारा लेकर सो गया है. So number 4, इससे भी wuzu नहीं टूटा. So you're four-legged and then you rest with your two hands like this. Okay, you put your hands down, your buttocks are grounded, so it's fine. Okay, even if you're leading with this, like I say, the main thing is if you lean slightly forward where it's not grounded, your wuzu is broken. दोनों घुटने खड़े करके दोनों बाजू से घुटनों को हल्के में लेकर सो गया है. So I've mentioned this where you raise your knees and your hand, you make a circle with your hands as well. That doesn't break the wuzu, and that is that with the matter of leaning while sleeping. But like I do say, if you have a deep sleep, it's probably better to do wuzu again. Yes, that is the most precautious view, the safer opinion as well. But in the situation, for example, like I mentioned, when you're going to university or you're coming back in winter time, namaz times are cramped, you've fallen asleep, in this manner you can act upon this. Makruhat of wuzu, doing wuzu in a dirty place, talking of worldly affairs whilst performing wuzu, cleaning the nose with the right hand. Okay, so when you clean your nose, so when you're cleaning the nose, it doesn't mean when you pass the water into your nose, you'll still pass the water with your right hand, but when you clean with your left nose, and performing wuzu against the sunnah method.